one. Well, hey guys, it's Evan Swanson here of Guild Mortgage, and I'm super excited today to bring you another Real Talk episode. This with a gentleman that I've gotten to know just in the past month or so. I want to welcome to the show Harrison Whitmarsh of Eleete Real Estate. Harrison, say hi.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me today, Evan. It's a pleasure.
It's my honor, and as viewers know, my real passion in this is to bring forth and draw out the stories, the narratives, the passions, the reasons why real estate professionals get into the business, and then how that influences and makes them unique in terms of how they engage with customers. And Harrison, your story is so awesome.
Appreciate it.
You are doing something in this business that in my 22 years of in this industry I have not seen, and so I'm
Mm,
super excited to share the
mm.
story of who you are and what you got. So welcome
Yeah,
to the episode. You and I shared coffee last week and
yeah.
kind of got ready for this episode. So where I want to start off is in the beginning. Tell us about
Mhm.
your upbringing and your mother and how your love of houses got started.
Yeah. Thank you for the intro. I grew up the product of a single mother. My mom raised me, and we fought pretty hard those early years when we were very poor to survive and eventually thrive. And one thing that was very pivotal in my upbringing was my mom's hunger to be a homeowner. And
Hmm.
so she did her research. She looked into all of the government programs. We lived in Southeast Colorado, and she somehow got a rehab loan. I believe the house was sold for $10,000, and the loan was the rehab itself was like 40,000. I think the all-in was 50.
Wow.
Very bad condition. And so it was an 1890 Victorian row home style house, kind of a walk up. The foundation was solid limestone, and the same family had owned it for decades, and it was in just really bad disrepair, but had a lot of original character. And so I remember as a kid gutting that house with my mom, having helping with the remodel to some extent, and just really appreciating all of the character and the story of that house. I
Yeah.
think that was a big part of my upbringing and a big part of why I ended up becoming a realtor because of how influential homeownership was to me at a young age.
And so what age were you when that happened? You had the opportunity to work on a house.
Ooh, maybe 8 or 9, I want to
Wow.
say.
Okay.
We moved to Southeast Colorado at, I believe, 6 or 7, and then she put in the effort, and we found the right house, and I think I was about 9, and then I think we left that house around maybe 13 or so,
And
something
and
like
so
that.
was the home sold at that time?
We did sell the house.
Do you
Yes,
remember what it
we
sold
did
for?
sell the house. So I think it was something like 120-ish.
Awesome.
So we definitely got our money back and then some. But when you factor out all the effort, the hours spent painting and
Fair.
remodeling, and oh my gosh! But it was a really great experience, and I think as a kid, it was big to have a home. You
Yeah.
know, I think we don't stop and talk about that enough. It was really great to go from an apartment to a house. And
Yeah, well,
so,
as a person who was brought up, and this is no disrespect to my parents, that I have had wonderful parents, but I never learned to work on a house. I didn't know how to do
yeah,
any of this stuff, and the lessons that are imparted there to be resourceful around your own house, and to have the
yeah,
confidence to walk into a situation knowing that you can make it better
yeah,
and livable is awesome. So very cool. And so that was kind of you got an upfront front row seat to see how that process works, and
yeah,
you gain an appreciation for not only home ownership and the financial benefits it can provide, but you
yeah.
also began to develop an appreciation for the history of homes. And do you remember anything about the history of that home, the family that lived there before you guys bought it?
So history, but also quality, I want to add,
Yep.
because I think old houses are built better than modern houses. Find me, there are many 1890s houses that are 130 years old and have lasted this long, and a lot of 1990s houses that are not faring as well. Yeah, so the story of that house, I know that the family was a multi-generation family.
Yep.
La Junta, Colorado, as an area, is older than the United States, I'm pretty sure. So those families can all trace their heritage and their lineage back to when that part of the U.S. was still Mexico and run by Spain. So I know that that family traced their lineage all the way back to when La Junta was founded, but other than that, I don't know much more. There was a huge garage in the backyard, big old trees as well, and I think it was a locksmith because I remember there being like a lot of locks and random stuff in there. It was a fun place to explore when I was younger.
Very cool. Okay, so let's move forward. You got licensed in the real estate industry in 2019, September of 2019, and since then you've been marrying your love and passion for history or love for old things
Yeah.
with housing. So I'm I want you to share with you the project that you're working on that takes up a lot of your time and really truly is kind of the passion
Yeah.
and the legacy that maybe one day you'll be able to leave behind.
I appreciate the opportunity to share it. I am working on what I call my life's work project, and it is a mission to save the story of our city one house at a time. And so I am going through Portland, picking a city block, a neighborhood, what have you, and then going house by house and doing my own unique research with the tools that I have found. When I got started in this business, I was looking at listings that were $2, $3 million, homes of significance, real significance, and they didn't mention anything about the story, but it's 120 years old. Think about all the memories and conversations that happen there, weddings in the backyard. I wanted to know more about that. I didn't want to forget that story, and so it started off kind of as an accident, just digging into old houses to see what I could find, and became this massive passion and a way to connect. Well, maybe not connect, to solidify the excitement that a client has for their home, to connect to the people that came before them and the story that they are continuing. So that's kind of the overarching mission. As of August 2024, I have 3,400 houses on my map,
That's a
where I
lot.
have found it's a
That's a
lot.
lot.
It's a lot. And I found original architects, builders, families, and then also old photos. You'd be surprised how many of these houses they put in the paper 100 years ago. And so being able to show somebody an old photo of their home is an adrenaline rush that I think most people don't understand.
Oh, it's super cool. And
It's fun.
you were kind enough to even look into the history of my house and
Yeah.
shared some interesting details about the original owners that we didn't know
Yeah.
about. And it was cool, like to have that narrative, to have that story around the place that you live. I mean, your home where you live, and I'm looking around because I'm sitting on my back patio now. Um, it's already such an emotional connection for yourself, your family, your household, whatever the case may be. But to understand
Mhm.
that emotional connection back into history is super powerful. And to your point, I mean, if nothing more than human interest,
Mhm.
um, there is arguably an economic benefit to
Yeah.
uncovering the history in that story. I mean, the analogy that I
Yeah.
use is I'm not much of a wine drinker. But take me to a winery, sit me in the tasting room, have me meet the
Yeah.
winemaker, have them tell me their story about how their family started this farm many generations ago, and I mean, I'm just like, this is the best. I love this wine,
Yeah.
but give me a case of it. And I think in
Right.
some respects, the same is true for a home, right? I mean, there's stories,
Yeah.
there's that sense of belonging, and
Yeah.
by bringing that history to life for
Mhm.
a current seller or buyer, you're actually enhancing the value,
Yeah.
for that transaction as well. So I think, in addition to the personal interest of it, I actually think there's probably some financial benefit as well. And I haven't seen
Yeah.
any studies on it, but anecdotally, that seems to be the case. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think that the story adds value. It is absolutely a value add to your property and to your investment. So looking at some of the houses in, say, Portland Heights, that's really kind of the first area that I wanted to dive very deeply.
Hmm.
I have almost every house in Portland Heights, and I have done unique research that has gone farther than the Oregon Historical Society, finding architects and builders of houses that previously that knowledge was lost to time. And so, talking about like Roscoe Hemingway, A.E. Doyle, some of the greatest architects in Portland's history, imagine finding a house that to you feels vernacular, simple, normal, and then being able to say, holy cow, this was built by one of the greatest people in our city. How much does that value increase when you know that what's behind the walls is a level of detail and quality that you didn't think about?
Right.
And so that's part of the mission as well, is reconnecting this story of beautiful homes of quality, so that people remember where they
Yeah.
came from and how well they were built. Using an example, I got to preview one of the greatest homes in Portland about 2 weeks ago, and I can't tell you much about it, but I can tell you that it was built by A.E. Doyle. We knew who the original owner was, but we didn't know who the builder was. And I was able to confirm that it was a commercial builder of the highest caliber who built apartment buildings in Portland. So
Huh.
this person spent extra money to pull a commercial crew to build this unbelievable 12,000 square foot house. That's a pretty cool part of the story. And I think now that we've completed the story, I think people will fall in love with that. And I think they'll get more money for it too. Uh, that's the goal here, is to connect people to the history and hopefully add value to the experience.
Well, so this is great. So this is where I wanted to draw next is that I think
Yeah.
anyone who might be watching this is curious, like, well, maybe they have an experience of buying and selling a home with,
Yeah.
a realtor that maybe doesn't offer this level of historical perspective. So what does that
Yeah.
look like when you go into a presentation, let's say for a potential seller who owns a home?
Yeah.
What types of resources and what sort of context are you bringing into those meetings?
Yeah, great question. So when I prepare for meetings, I'm not just looking at the RMLS history, the sales history I say in the modern era, in the internet
Hmm.
era. I
Hmm.
am also looking back at old newspaper resources. I am looking at old census data. I
Mm.
am doing genealogy work for some of the pioneers that built some of these houses, depending on when the house was built, right? And so I show up with a basically a one-page sheet of any cool things I could find. And I say, hey, this is what 5 minutes of Harrison time gets you. If you want more, I'd be happy to do it, but I don't do it for free. Hire me. I'd love to sell the house. And then when we go live, I bring an entire book of the whole history of the house from when the land was vacant all the way to today. And so the last one I built is 15 pages long for a 1960 house. And I found everything. So the first 5 minutes, I gave them just a little bit, and then we found the entire story. It's
That's
amazing.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's super cool. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about our conversation and learning more about the what you do, Harrison, is
Yeah.
um, you're doing this because you truly have a passion, not for the
Of
financial outcomes or selling a million
course.
houses, but it's important to you deep down inside that
Yeah.
this historical context is not lost, right? That these stories and narratives move forward through history. And I relate this, from my perspective, I'm a certified financial planner in addition to a mortgage. As far as I know, I'm the only
Mhm.
financial planner, CFP designated loan originator in Oregon. And it's not because I want to do a loan for every single person. It's my
Mhm.
professional belief that if you're going to buy a home and take out a mortgage, it's a large financial decision. There needs
Yeah.
to be sort of a broader purpose and all that thinking. And for you, what I
Yeah.
love about this is that you're putting so much hard work and dedication into your engagements.
Yeah.
You're going above and beyond what your competitors are doing, but you're doing it
Yes.
for the reason that you deep down inside have a passion to have these
Yeah.
stories live on. Is that
Yes.
accurate? Yeah. Yeah. And the byproduct
Big.
will be you will sell more houses. More people will be engaged and see the benefit of it. But
I
it's
hope so.
you're tamping down a deep desire down to have this history move forward. And so
Yeah.
what are some of you mentioned like what are some of the you're going back through newspaper archives? You
Yeah.
showed me a book that I think you purchased at a estate sale that had pictures of old homes. Talk for a second
Yes.
about the broad range of historical resources you're pulling on to bring
Yeah.
this information to buyers and sellers.
Yeah. So the real answer is there is no repository. So
Hmm.
when I first started this project, I thought I was going to have just this wide swath of never-ending resources to sort through. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to have enough time. Absolutely not the case. The people that came before us did not save as much as we think they did. So the Oregonian Archives and the Oregon Daily Journal, those are pretty much my main two resources because it's literally written history. Other than that, though, I spend far too much money asking the city of Portland to look up permits for me. That is part of it. But there are a lot of houses that don't have public permits because the city burned down multiple times over the decades. So we don't have everything to be honest. Other than that, I'm looking at old maps that I find online. I am purchasing every book about housing that I come across at estate sales, at Powell's. I believe I've got one of the biggest collections of books and resources to go through. But please, if you find any more, think of me. I will pay
We'll
you for
do
them.
it. We'll do it.
There are some very low mintage books out there that talk about Portland. So yeah, that's basically it.
So,
I have to dig really deep, and to be honest, I do want to put a disclaimer out there. There are houses with no history. I
mm,
have done houses where I have looked in depth and find literally nothing. So some houses, the story is already lost to time. It's gone.
mhm.
But those are the resources that I look through and hope to find something.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, you gave one example already of a home that you were able to uncover and find
Yeah,
some interesting details with regard to the owner. Obviously, had a
yeah,
renowned architect, pulled in a commercial firm. Give us
yeah.
another example. Like what's some different house or different story that you were able to uncover for a buyer or seller through a home search?
Oh my gosh, that is a really good one.
Well,
Um,
I think you
I
mentioned to me there was one you got involved with where there was a home that maybe it wasn't for sale or it was coming on
yeah,
the market. You caught wind of it, and you were able to determine that this home was indeed designed by a renowned architect. And I think that, as you recalled, was it were able to market the home with that and help the seller. And or there was one
yeah.
recently, a unique property that you were able to uncover a very unique story, and that became important to the sellers because the sellers wanted to have that carried on as a part of the living history of the home as
Yeah.
well.
The one that comes to mind at the moment is I made a great friendship and ultimately a client that had a 1938 36 Roscoe Hemingway Art Deco house in Portland and
Wow.
in Eastmoreland specifically. One of only two ever built in Portland in a very narrow window of time. Think about the end of the Great Depression up until Hitler in 1938 gave his I Hate the World speech.
Sure.
That was a very short 6 or 7 years of time where construction just skyrocketed. And I found the story of Roscoe Hemingway building these two homes. The builder that hired him to do these two spec houses in 1936, and all of the original marketing that they did, talking about how amazing this house was going to be. It's a new style, never graced Portland before. And so I just reached out to them and said, hey guys, look at this really cool history that I found. And 6 months later, life changed. They wanted me to sell the house. Ended up building a huge book of Eastmoreland history. I ended up doing a very deep dive in all of the houses that kind of fall into that category of Art Deco slash international from that era. There's only about 20 houses. It was
Wow.
one of 20 that was built in that era of like special, cool, interesting. And so when we went to sell the house, I got to share that story with everybody that walked through the door. And the buy-in from the community was unreal. They loved the
Yeah.
history. They loved the story. They've been walking past the house for the last 70 years. They wanted to know more about it. And here we are. I've got it for you. Let's talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So I had to show up with a lot of water because all I did was talk for 12
Well,
hours.
again, I mean, anecdotally, like that clearly had to bring value to your seller,
Yeah.
right? And it would be great if Freakonomics podcast ever sees this. Hey, do an episode where two identical homes were sold, one with the historical context and one without, because
Mhm.
I would love to know what the empirical marginal value is of having
Yeah.
this historical context. But it's got to be there, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the story, and we as humans, we are easily entertained by that. So it's
Mhm.
got to be there. Yeah. Okay. So what are some of the other neighborhoods around Portland? You've mentioned Portland Heights. You've mentioned Eastmoreland. What are some of the neighborhoods around town that specifically intrigue you in terms of some of the historical houses or construction that you've seen?
Uh, Great question. Really great question. My first area of curiosity was actually downtown Portland.
Hmm.
Specifically, they call it Nob Hill, the Alphabet District,
Sure.
the
Yeah.
Northwest District. So I am working through that, trying to find the original 1860s estates that were built. They used to take a full city block, berm it, and then build their estate right in the center so that
Hmm.
from all areas you had a good view. It felt regal and grand.
Hmm.
And all of those homes are gone, literally all of them. Most of them were torn down in the 1970s or burned down for some reason. So that's the first place that I think is really fun. And I have a lot of history to share and enjoy sharing.
Well, that's
The
interesting.
second
Let
one,
me stop you for a second because
yeah,
when you walk through
yeah,
Northwest, I'm thinking about being by
yeah,
like Chapman Elementary, and you're walking around.
yeah,
A lot of those blocks are built up, right? There's like a 3 foot retaining wall along the sidewalk. It's built up, and that's all because the
yeah.
original estates were built on top of a man-made berm. Okay,
Exactly.
that's really
Exactly.
interesting.
And specifically Captain John Cooch. So he was the one that set the alphabet in the alphabet district. He was the one that set the grid.
Hmm.
That was his donation land claim. And so it started by him giving a full city block to each of his four daughters for their wedding gift. And so they
Mm.
would build their big, beautiful house just the next block over for mom and dad on this land that he gave them. So there's a strip of five city blocks facing the river that
Hmm.
had a beautiful view and used to have these really grand, like 9,000 square foot Victorians, turrets on all sides, porte cochere to pull the carriage in, like really interesting houses. So that's a fun one. And to continue that story, when all of those people downtown sold their land for development, which ended about 1930, they went down to Dunthorpe. And most people don't know about Dunthorpe. It is the city's greatest secret of cool old houses. Most of them have big walls of hedges, so you can't even see what's back there. But all of those pioneers and pioneer families moved down to Dunthorpe to build their new estates. So,
Hmm.
one of my favorite stories is about William S. Ladd, as in Ladd's Addition.
Sure.
He owned most of the city at one point. He is the richest man in the story in the history of our city. And in 19 like 23, he moved down to Dunthorpe and built a property called the Willows. And the Willows was about 15 acres and had this beautiful like 15,000 square foot house on it. And in around, I think it was 1983, they tore it down.
Oh, is that
But
right?
Dunthorpe has just a really fun story of beautiful, grand homes that are out of a fairy tale, out of a book. I love that area.
That's awesome.
Looking at other
That was like
talking other
the
history.
first edge of urban flight. Everyone left Northwest to Dunthorpe. That
Yep.
was like the
Yep.
first edge of it.
Specifically the pioneer families did. That's where they all went. And then my other favorite neighborhood is definitely Eastmoreland. What a fun story. The William S. Ladd Company owned Eastmoreland. They platted it, they sold it, they created the golf course, they created Reed College. And I just love the caliber of home, the quality of home. Most of them were unique, special, one offs. And I think that is just so fun to see how architects over the years did certain changes for different owners or to fit different lots. And so in Eastmoreland, feel free, anybody watching this, please just go spend 2 hours walking around the neighborhood and go enjoy the architecture because it's still there. You get to go enjoy that today. So I think I answered your question. Those are my favorite three in
Yeah.
terms of like spending time.
That's awesome. Yeah, and actually, so as a guy that grew up on 37th and Steel and used to walk through Reed College to get to see my friends in
Yeah,
Eastmoreland, I can definitely
yeah.
relate to that. And as I understand it, I think and this is my limit. This is me being a very limited historian of Portland history compared to
Mhm.
you, but I think Ladd's Addition was the first platted and organized residential neighborhood in Portland, followed by Eastmoreland, which was the second, as I understand. Correct? I think. No? Okay. Correct me.
No, no, it's okay. So we need to go back just a little bit farther. So in I think it was 1871, the city of East Portland was founded. And that's where you see essentially Southeast Belmont, Southeast Hawthorne, kind of along the water there. That was the original town of Eastmoreland, or I'm sorry, East Portland.
Got
And
it.
then in Northeast Portland, there was the town of Albina,
Okay.
currently where I-5, basically where the Rose
Yep.
Center is.
Yep.
That was Albina. And then in 1905, the three towns merged, but there were neighborhoods of all kinds all over those three towns before they all merged into Portland. So I recently did some history in Albina, specifically the Albina, or what was it? Portland's addition to Albina. And I was looking at why some of the city blocks are just a little wider. And it was because when Albina was its own town, they had carriages running up and down those streets and wanted them to feel like forested boulevards. So there are many, many beautiful neighborhoods that have older history than Ladd's Addition. The story of Ladd's Addition is William S. Ladd had that land. He said, I want to do something special with it. And he platted the spoke and wheel pattern that
Right.
you see
Yeah.
from the air. And that was platted around, I want to say like 1904-ish.
Okay.
So right before the city merged, and it wasn't filled out until the 40s. It was vacant land for decades because we had
Interesting.
so much land for sale and not enough builders.
Yeah. Interesting. What a stark contrast to today.
It is.
Um, awesome. Okay. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
so I also, I want to just give a little bit more context around your professional background. We jumped right into the history, but you also spent a number of years working for a big box retailer in,
Yep.
um, corporate management. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
reflect a little bit about that time in your professional career and
Sure.
how that helped prepare you for a career in real estate. Because in real estate, for those of you who aren't in our industry, we are all kind of little sole corporations, and we
Yeah.
have a lot of times direct say on how we spend our time, energy, and money. But having that professional background and training from a large corporation can oftentimes be a gigantic benefit.
Yeah, I started in 2011 in retail as a basically a stock boy,
Hmm.
and I worked my way all the way up to store manager after about a 10-year career in retail. And by the end, I was opening new stores and managing teams of 30 to 40 people, dealing with schedules, dealing with inventory, and it was not my passion, but what I enjoyed about it was the people aspect. So,
Hmm.
what I told myself every day when I put on the Office Depot shirt was I'm going to help 50 people today solve really small problems. I'm going to affect 50 lives today. And you would be surprised how many people walk in with their dad's old vintage pen looking for a refill. And when you find it, they start tearing up and they want to give you a hug because you just made their week. I loved that about my previous career, the emotional touch points of it all, spending time with good people, just helping. I wanted to help. And so when Lee Davies of Elite Real Estate came into my store and needed help, I helped him. And he said, you are wasting your talents here, sir. You need to come to real estate and help people do something impactful in their lives. And my new mission is I think I'm going to help what 1,000 people in my life, 1,000 families do one of the biggest things that they and it's a deeply humbling experience, deeply rewarding. I love what I do, and everything I learned from my previous career in working with people and finding solutions got me to where I am today.
Yeah. Well, dude, you're doing it in such a unique manner. And it's one of the reasons why I was so
Appreciate
excited to have you on the episode here to share your story. And you've been kind enough, just in our limited interactions, to share some anecdotes with me based on some historical research, with my family, who I have a family
Yeah,
that's involved in real estate and historically, and then also obviously just our house. And
yeah.
it really is a unique perspective that no one is bringing to the industry. And so I just want to
Mhm.
say thank you and honor you and let you know that I think your future is extremely bright. And
I
if
appreciate it.
people want to get a hold of you, Harrison, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so I have tried to make it the easiest way possible to contact me. My email is harrison at imharrison.com. And so if you want to go to imharrison.com, you'll learn all about me. I'm also on Instagram. Instagram is something that I find a lot of joy in sharing old houses from Portland with my world, with my sphere, with my community. And so Harrison.Whitmarsh is my Instagram handle. And yeah, I love working with good people. Part of my focus here is I just want to work with good people, selling good houses, and saving the history of our city as I can. And it's been a really amazing 5 years doing what I love. I mean, if you can't tell by how much I'm smiling, I genuinely love what I do.
Yeah, it's
And
obvious
so,
for sure. And I will say you are a great follow. I follow you on Instagram and you have you post very cool photos of vintage homes, vintage rooms, vintage design. So if you're into
yeah,
historical perspective on home ownership or homes, like follow you for sure. And the other thing I think, and I hope I'm not putting you out there, Harrison, but one of the things you mentioned when we met for coffee is you're a person doesn't necessarily have to be in a position to sell their home that day if they're interested in their historical context. If you think you
right.
have a historically significant home and you're
Mhm.
curious about learning more about it, is it fair to say, Harrison, you would be more than happy to engage that
More than happy.
person, even if they don't have a near-term buy or sell in their pocket?
Yeah, more than
Yeah.
happy, more than happy. And to come back to the point of some of our history in Portland has already been lost to time. Part of the mission is connecting with good people who have old houses and know the story or part of the story so that I can record it. And a lot of my connections regarding history are for that purpose. It's not about business. It's not about creating a client relationship or selling a house 10 years from now. I genuinely just want to save the story and talk about what excites me, which is your old house. So
Yeah.
yeah, please reach out. I will give just about anybody 5 to 10 minutes of research just for free. Like, let's just talk about it. I'm curious to see what I can find. I also do a silent auction every year. I hope to expand that in North Portland for there's a school there, and we sell a history basket. And I think this last year it earned $600. My friend painted the front of your house, and then I did an entire book of the history of everything that happened. And so this last year's winner, I think it was about 25 pages worth of history that I was
Wow.
able to find from the original plat when it was the only house in the neighborhood, all the way to the plans that were probably started with by the builder and everything in between. So it's so fun doing this. I truly enjoy it and would love to connect with people about their old houses and the stories that they know about Portland.
That's so awesome. Well, Harrison, thank you. And I'm excited to know you now and follow your work
Yeah,
as the years go on and hopefully
I
be able
appreciate it.
to benefit from all those stories that you're able to uncover. So thank you for all your work
Yeah,
and thank you for joining
yeah.
us today on Real Talk. And again, if you want to get
Thanks
a
for
hold of
having me.
Harrison, Google him and or imharrison.com. Thanks so much for watching.
It's so easy. Thanks.